start my slide with a bit of a thinking moment. This is actually an interesting one. I just wanted to start up with the team. So what you see here in front of you is actually a protection structure. This protection structure was required to protect an end of a bundle at the middle of the North Sea. And then during the mobilization, it was very well mobilized. We hop on the vessel, sea fastening confirmed, everything was really great. We moved for a day and a half in the middle of the North Sea from Norway to the middle of the field. And then when we start to be ready for the mobilization of the equipment to install them on the seabed, we found that structure bent. And if you look at it, you can really see there's one leg and the other leg, and there's a bit of a bending here. And in that bending, if you take a straight line, you will find that the structure got buckled or bent by about 10 centimeters. So it was quite a bit of an interesting how that happened, and how we as subsea engineers have designed it for protection and for installation and for mobilization in rough weather. And, it came out like that. And one of the things was during mobilization, and of course, if we have a Q&A, I would definitely ask the team for, how it would typically look like, and we have a conversation about it. But during the mobilization, someone came with a bright idea that why don't we just add a couple of I-beams and fix the structure from this point, weld the fixing point to the T-bars of the vessel, and give it an extra piece of assurance that it's going to stick there, it's going to do the job, and it's going to arrive to the field. But unfortunately, that was done without management of a change. And we ended up fixing the structure firmly from one end, and we've left it floating from the other end. And we all know the North Sea, the slamming effect of the waves during transportation from the fabrication site to the installation side, actually it bent the structure. So just a thinking moment, something I've learned, and I'm more than happy to share with the wider team here that this management of change is a live activity. It's going to stick with you through the whole process until you put it on the seabed and actually operate the equipment. So small management of change ended up with a bent structure. We had to do a lot of engineering live on the field to make sure that interface points are not affected. We had to get an NDE personnel to check on the bent areas that the cracks are not actually affecting the integrity of the structure. There was a lot of work to make sure if we can accept that structure as is or not. But however, I just wanted my thinking point for today is that sea fastening might be a problem. It have to be done to the letter, to the engineering that was done behind it. If there's a change, we have to follow the process and make sure that that's not impacting, the overall delivery program. Good. I'm gonna move on the next one. I was planning to show a video, but because of the technology, I'm not planning to show it now. But there was actually a video that can show you how the vessel can be rough and tough. And maybe in the next opportunity, I'm gonna show it to everyone. But I think the bandwidth will not be forgiving if I do it for this one. So what do we have next? I'm planning to show you a table of content of a typical subsea execution plan, how it would look like, and also planning to show you how a level 1 plan from a very, very high level would look like. And from a typical execution plan for subsea, from a project management perspective, you would normally try to get a flavor of multiple moving parts. So definitely you need an executive summary at the end of your plan. There might be an introduction for a higher level, and within that introduction, we just focus on the project execution plan overview. This is the project, this is the objective of it from a very, very high level. Revision control of the document, because that document is so crucial for the project lifecycle. It can stay with any project manager or senior project manager or director throughout the life cycle of the project. And it needs to, first of all, think about the regional strategy. Are we working today in Egypt? Are we working in Angola? Are we working in Turkey? Are we working in the North Sea? Are we working in West Africa, India? That is really, the regional requirements is so important. And definitely the regional team is so key to get that conversations. And I can give you a few examples on West Nile Delta, for example. The regional requirements were so different if I compare them to Angola on Block 18 or Block 31. So different to the regional requirements in the North Sea. So definitely one of your first point of alignment is understanding the regional strategy, the business model that we have down there, and any key aspects we need to consider within the execution plan of our subsea project. Then definitely in your introduction, we need to have a stint about the overview of the scope and the plan, basically the schedule of it. I would show you a good one in the next slide on how a high-level schedule should look like, and the project execution principles. And that, for me, that one is different from company to another. So some operators, they do have their major project common process. Others have a different processes, which really shows you how you're going to manage your stage gate review. Things like start of fabrication. There is a stage gate review for it. Start of offshore mobilization. There is a stage gate review of it. When you execute the work within the 500 zone, especially if it's an operating asset, that's definitely a stage gate review that needs to be reviewed very well. Then to hook up needs a stage gate review. Commissioning is also a stage gate review, and making sure that the facility is well connected, mechanically completed, and ready for the system handover for operation and startup, and basically handover of their liability requirements for those that are going to come and operate the facility. So that is really key. What you're going to say, I'm going to follow that processes. I'm going to pick up those processes from my company procedures. If there are any changes, that's the right time to make it very clear and get the endorsement on it. Next thing is definitely health, safety, security, and environment. It's really a key thing. Definitely health and safety is key. Security sometimes differ from location to another. If I remember very well, during the West Nile Delta, in the period of 2011 and 2013 within Egypt, and up to the period of 2015 and 2016, security was a heavy topic, and it was very well studied, it was very well maintained, and it was very live document. And everyone on the project had to take a proper introduction and a proper learning and awareness and about what are the procedures, what are the how to keep the people safe. Few things like, you know, transportation of the people needs security on it. How to make sure that everyone go to the work and get back to whatever in the world the location is safe and secure is a key thing. Environmental, you know, it might sometimes it do work about the environmental requirements for waste management. And let's talk subsea. For example, if you do a pre-commissioning and you have a pipeline full of MEG, you have to understand your environmental boundaries. What is the license? What kind of chemicals are used? And what are the right governmental bodies that we need to go to and to get their approval for the execution? In Norway, we use the MPD. There was a lot of audits, conversations, material safety data sheets that were shared before any mobilization or any campaign. The same with Egypt. We have to go to the environmental agency, make sure that we're in line with law number 4 for 1994, for the year of 1994. It took a lot of work and a lot of pre-hand coordination to make sure that we don't get stopped when we execute and the subsea equipment are being installed, pipelines are being put on the seabed. All our environmental requirements are on track and very well managed. And I remember very well in West Nile Delta when I was in front of the Minister of Petroleum and I was presenting to him the pipelines and all the great job being done on that project. He asked me one question, you know, that underwater table you're getting from the onshore approach, how are you going to manage it and how do you discharge it? So imagine, you know, a fast track project required to save the deficit between the export and between the supply and demand in Egypt. And the first question came to you was, how do you manage the environment? Are you in line with law number 4 of 1994? The good news is we were clear on that. We knew the plan very well, and we were so ready to answer the question and get basically the appraisal that you know that we needed at that time. On the project management front, that's really the key. What will be the team? Who will be doing what? What will be the cadences? How the information will be shared? That typically what you would expect in that project management section. If there are multiple organizations within the same company, you know, that should tell you the dynamics between how the different, you know, engines and part of the engine is going to work together. So that's definitely something you would think of, and you need to put it as a principle in your execution. And then you need a bit of a subsurface information, you know, the kind of reservoirs that we're talking about, depth of those reservoirs. And typically what you're looking for at that time is the chemical injection that you're expecting to use, because it's definitely affecting the design of your subsea equipment. Flow assurance considerations, because our subsurface team or basically any subsurface team in any operating organization, they know that very well, and they're the first people to educate, you know, all the following parties about how the reservoir going to look like and what will be the flow assurance challenges, and what will be the key bits of design for the execution of the project itself. Wells is definitely important. We really need to understand the top hole completion design, high pressure housing, tubing design, all of that kind of information is so key. And definitely within your execution plan, you need to give a look to that one, understand all the key aspects you need to understand for the selection and the delivery of your subsea equipment. For example, the downhole functions, you need to understand that. Chemical injection downhole, you need to understand that. The three connector type they're going to sit on the high pressure housing, you need to understand that very well. Bending moments, the basically rig requirements, mobilization of the rig, the BOP movements, the recertification of the BOP. So you really need to understand the drilling program and the wells and stay very close to that team, because if I show you in my next plan, subsea goes really hand in hand with wells. Engineering management, that's also a key one. We need to understand, who's the body. Is it internal in-house engineering team that's taking care of it? Are we bringing a third party to the engineering for us? How are we going to manage the engineering queries? If there is a need for deviation, how are we going to manage it? And if there is an interface technical query, how are we going to manage that? So typically you would expect, that kind of education when it comes to the engineering piece. How are we going to manage engineering, ensure that the engineering requirements are very well. If there are any deviations from the shell statements or from the requirements of the operator, that plan needs to tell you, where to find it, how to manage it. Quality, key, because we really need to understand the criticality. We're not going to have everything in the whole project as criticality 1, which takes majority of the effort. We really need to understand what needs a criticality 1, what needs 2, what needs 3, what needs 4, because your level of effort actually goes in line with that. Things really need a high focus. For example, pressure containment is definitely an area of focus that where you really need to put your quality efforts on it and make sure it gets delivered to the standards. So typically within a quality management plan, you would pick up all the high risk, quality related items, and you would definitely go and work on them and make sure that you understand your priorities and all the different quality risks, not only in engineering, it's also about engineering and fabrication and installation and commissioning and startup of the whole life cycle. So that what would you expect with that kind of section. SURF delivery equipment. So definitely that's the piece that I'm sure majority of us are interested in. What would be the scope of the subsea equipment, umbilical, riser and flow line scope? What are the key handover points? For example, if there is an SPS on its own, how the SPS team going to hand over to the subsea execution team, the IRNs, the release notes, how can we demonstrate that the equipment have met the functional requirements and it works properly, and how the equipment during transportation have maintained the same functional requirements, how those functional requirements are being handed over to the installation contractor, how it's being put on the seabed, how it's being hooked up together and started up. So that kind of information you're expecting. Delivery organization, because if there are multiple contracts, if there are multiple entities, working together, that definitely your point where you can see those delivery organization and how they interact together. Actuator obsolescence, I intentionally left it because from the material I got this, there was an obsolescence issue. Some of the actuators on that project X, they were obsolete. And at the time, we have to understand, what we're going to do about it, from how can we help, the operations team to manage that, from maintaining the reliability of the plant, i.e., what kind of spares do they need and what kind of plans do they have to make sure that the reliability of the operating subsea facilities are intact. They need to achieve their production targets, and it's our job as a projects team to set the end users and the operators for success. So things like obsolescence is definitely something you need to capture in your execution plan. Tubing hanger material upgrade, I left it as well because yes, there was questions about the tubing hanger material at the time. How can we improve it? How can we work on it? So those kind of things that also you need to pick up. SPS equipment delivery scope, if SPS is standalone, of course, what do you need in terms of tooling and offshore support to set yourself for success? That's the key items really need to see when it comes to the SURF piece. And of course, we need to talk about the top sides. How we're going to hook up to the top sides. Is it brownfield equipment? Is it new field equipment? That is definitely an interface that you need to look at if you want to look at things from an end-to-end point of view. Flexible flow lines and umbilical installation. Yeah, definitely. What's the strategy? And what would be the installation strategy for the flexibles if we have umbilical? How are we going to basically hand over that to the subsea completions team so they can get all the things together, hooked up, connected, and working together? That's definitely also another point that we need to discuss in an execution plan. survey and positioning, what we're going to use, what kind of coordinates we're going to use. And from my experience, typically your handover is something you need to make sure that you understand very well, because your subsea installation contractor might have a positioning and a survey standards that are different from operations team. Majority of the operator now, they do have a very good database, and in that database, they have a positioning of all the subsea infrastructure, very well noted, very well positioned to maintain the integrity. And that kind of handover, you really need to understand that in terms of what are the coordinate systems being used, what kind of software being used, and how can we make sure that this is handed over well to the end users to have their database. One of the things I've seen in my life as well, sometimes your admiralty or the Navy might ask you for that kind of questions. How do you do your survey? What kind of information, coordinates, and that kind of thing, because they have the full right to ask for it. And one day with the Egyptian Navy, actually, we had a very serious conversation about the positioning systems and how can we land in a win-win position where we can give them a friendly used or a friend or basically an information that can deal with their system and at the same time with the operating system of a company. So that one of the things you need to think about when you focus on that point number 11. Marine assurance, definitely, and it differs widely. Marine assurance, Lawler, and the other requirements within the North Sea are different than the requirements in other parts of the world. However, a lot of operators, they maintain minimum standards. And from my experience, I've seen the North Sea standards being really implemented in much wider areas because of their track record and basically their reliability. So that's definitely a point that you need to understand how we're going to investigate the vessel, ensure that the vessels are fit for service and fit for the operator requirements as well as the regulatory requirements. That's really a key part there as well. Tie-in and commissioning, how are we going to get things together? The scope, who's doing it, how are we going to get the certification so we can say, okay, it's hooked up now together and it's safe. We can ready to get to the next point. How are we going to get closer to the wells and the source of the hydrocarbon? How can we document that? How are we going to do the commissioning and actually drive the whole thing to basically a system handover, ready for the operations to introduce hydrocarbons? This is really a key point, and it takes a lot of coordination between the execution team, Subsea, and between the operating team. And it needs to be done in a one team based on a trust and based on reliability and based on a one mission team approach. This is really how I saw it from my experience. Operations, who will operate, what is the organization, what to operate, how we can do the handover of the control system, for example, how we can introduce the hydrocarbons safely, and how do we basically do the operations management or the operations readiness management of a change. Wells tie-in, startup management of a change, and is maintenance on track to achieve the reliability targets of the operating facility. That's definitely something projects will be heavily involved in to set the end user and the operator for success. And of course, procurement and supply chain is key. There will be a lot of procurement from the first stage of the project till the end of it. So what will be your key supply chain? Any conversation on vendor lists, qualification of vendors. For example, do we have requirements for super duplex? Do the operator have requirements only for super duplex? Do they have only approved a limited number of forge suppliers in the world? Those kind of things really need to pick up at the time to understand clearly. Are there any requirements and lessons learned that needs to be implemented and captured in my procurement plan? Yes and no. So that point 15 is so important and crucial because it resonates very well as well with the quality requirements, with the engineering requirements and others. So it's definitely a key. Point 15, project services plan, how we're going to manage the reporting, the frequent check-ins, and how can we stay on the top of this project in terms of controlling, making sure the performance and the KPIs and the metrics are being met. So we all are set for success when it comes for the delivery. Finance plan, sometimes I've seen it, sometimes I did not see it. It depends on basically the funding and how the funding process and the cash flow will be controlled. Sometimes it's shared, sometimes it's not, but it depends on the appetite and the level of information that needs to be shared. And definitely there'll be appendices in attachment to that. I know it's heavy, there's a lot of information, but I just wanted to give you a brief of the typical topics we really need to put in our own mind when we go for a typical subsea execution plan. I'm happy to go to the next one. If there are any questions for now, we can go for it, but if not, I can go ahead and continue. So Shall I continue, Ahmed, or do we have any questions?
I think Engineer Mohammed has a good question on the chat. He asks you, how did your experience benefit you when you shifted from the operator side to the service or contractor side of business, in terms of the typical execution plan you mentioned?
You see it from the different side. When you operate and when you do it from the operator point of view and you go to the other side of the fence, you understand what the operator is asking for. You start to pick up what is the key requirement and what's nice to have. And when you speak the same language with the operator, I believe things really get simpler, because you can pick up really the good points that really does make a difference. Let me tell you, for example, selection of the equipment for the subsea equipment. If we go for a fit for purpose design, where we can really clearly identify the functions that can give the safety requirements, the operation requirements, and at the same time, it doesn't have to be over and beyond, which can give a very good fast track delivery and schedule and cost. Operators normally listen, and actually I can speak more about that in my slides for the market piece, where I can tell you where the operator experience can come into the SPS supply experience to actually deliver much more standard, predictable deliverables. So if you stay with me, I'm going to talk more about it in I think 2 or 3 slides in more details. Do we have other questions, or shall I?
Yes, also Mr. Gordon is asking, should the project execution plan also include something on decommissioning? Absolutely.
Absolutely. I've seen it in other execution plans. For North Sea, Gordon, I've seen it with my own eyes. For other areas, I did not see it. So depends. In some projects in Egypt, I did not see it even mentioned. And so it really depends on the regulatory requirements. From Norway days, it was definitely a requirement to be clearly stated in there. In other areas, depends on basically on the laws and the operator aspirations.
Okay, perfect, Ahmed. I think you can proceed with your presentation.
Okay, so I just wanted to show you a typical timeline for execution of a simple subsea tie-in project, where you can really see, in long lead items, procurement is really key. Sometimes long lead procurement goes ahead of the SPS contract placement. This is where you really can go and buy things like, the forgings for your valves, the master forgings for your tree blocks, any long lead cards, communications. Nowadays, we see a lot of supply chain challenges with communication cards. So actually, I'm impressed these days. We work on cards more than we worked about valves. You buy a lot of your long lead items at a time. Typically, from my experience, you're talking about something within the magnitude of 10% to 12% of your SPS value, where you go and order your long lead items, and then you have the order a few months later for the subsea production systems. And then what comes next is basically procurement of the umbilical and flexibles. It might come a little bit after SPS, depends really on the suppliers and the OEMs. Nowadays, market is more loaded to get an umbilical. Now, majority of the suppliers, from my experience, and maybe I'm wrong, are asking for 1.5 to 2 years from today. So umbilical supply and flexibles now are starting to be a bottleneck. So I would expect in a kind of a new execution plan that this bet is actually moved a little bit to the left if you want to set yourself for success and for an earlier fast track deliveries. Typically, project gets into an execute after that, and it really depends, meaning by execute that all the different parts of the engine are now starting to work together. So that means that wells are working at the same hem sheet with the SPS, with the same hem sheet, working the SPS installation, and from the same hem sheet, operational readiness and startup. And this is really where the whole symphony starts to get together. As you can see there, you got well 1, well 2, 3, 4, 5. The BOP movements is key, and any maintenance needs to be done on BOP. You really need to capture that in your plan. What you see there from the green dots and ending with the red dot, where you have the multi-bore jumpers might be on your critical path, might not be on your critical path. Really depends on the materials and depends on the maturity of the engineering and fabrication and your fabrication strategy. Having a jumper done in country is different than having a jumper done abroad. Transportation is key for jumpers, especially if it grows in length and in dimensions. On the top of this timeline you see there, Christmas tree delivery is key. So your trees delivery program is key. Jumpers, your drilling program and well drilling program, and then basically readiness of the control systems, top sides, delivery of the umbilical. And you can really see here those triangles this is where you can start to put your wells on production. So for example, well number 1 is delivered here. Well number 1 was actually ready to be tied in. That's the jumper of it that came on time, and the tree actually was delivered a long time ago, as per this one, or it might, well, yeah, it was a long time ago, installed on the top of the well during the drilling program. It was tied in by this jumper, and then it was brought on production. So normally this is how it works, like a symphony. Have a tree, is it fulfilling well with the drilling program and the placement of it? Is it hooked up? Is it ready to start up? And this red piece that you see here, the critical path of that project was actually an injection well. So that injection well required its umbilical to be on track. It required the drilling program of that well to be on track, the jumpers to be delivered on track, and basically it's ready to be put on production afterwards. So maybe your critical path may be an injection well, it might be a gas production well, a water injection well. It really depends on how you get the whole harmony together and how you get it all together for execution. So I just wanted to give you a bit of a flavor, of how you really get the bits and pieces of a symphony together. It's really trees, it's really drilling programs, it's really connections, and how you're going to get them all together and make it tied up together, commission and being safe for introduction of hydrocarbons. Any questions on that one?
Yeah, so far no questions on the chat box.
Very good. I'm gonna move on then. So demographics, it really differs from a location to another, and I will give you an example. If you do a fabrication in Siberia of a fishing production structure or of any structure, imagine for the paint to dry on it, you need 3 to 4 weeks. If you do the same in Egypt, the paint is gonna dry, I think, in 4 hours. So those kind of key things you really have to keep in mind when you do your execution planning. The weather conditions in the North Sea are really less forgiving to West Africa. And if you look at that, symphony or that overall execution plan, weather here was not catered for because it was a West Africa project. If it's the North Sea or if it's Egypt, for example, you might need to look at your weather window, and it needs to be really clearly mentioned on this execution plan. If I go back, what else do we need from a demographics point of view? Shallow water programs are starting now to be heavily considered, especially in the Arabian, in the Gulf area. So, but water depth down there is ranging between 1 meter to 5 meters. So imagine how we can come up with a subsea solution that can fit that really ultra shallow program. Do we really need to go for a simple surface marinized tree, or do we really need to go for a shallow water tree? This kind of conversation that comes within that area, which means that demographics are different. For India, what I've seen in India is that contracts in India are a little bit less flexible to management of a change. Once contract is in place, majority of the operator appetite for change is zero. So any changes that come up during execution most probably going to take a lengthy operation, going to take a lengthy time for them to be landed and progressed and actually completed. So one of the things I've seen down there is we have to really be clear about our lump sum, be so clear about the boundaries of the conditions, and most probably contractually changes will not be accommodated. So you have to be really clear when you put that in your execution plan and in your execution model. What else? Red Sea, I've seen mainly weather conditions, windows in the Red Sea, even though there's actually a Subsea 1, Subsea 3, by the way, and for GAPCO down there in the Red Sea, and actually there are 3 Hughes trees down there in the Red Sea as well. And when I spoke to the experts that have done it before, they said one of the key challenges were the weather condition in the Red Sea as well. and the window and the tightness of the window down there. So I just want to give you a flavor of, your execution plan going to change heavily, depends on your demographics. Good, gonna go to the next one. So just commentary on the market. What I see right now from my position and from my current role, I can see a lot of requests now for fast track deliveries. I can see when we sat down for implementing solutions, majority of the operators now are really asking for a quick and a fast track delivery. So that's really the top thing I can see as a common trend from majority of the conversations I'm having within the MENAT region. I can see a reduced appetite for qualifications. I'm not really saying as if I go, back 10 years or maybe 15 years, qualifications appetite were higher. We've been pushing valves to be qualified. The API 72nd edition, majority of the equipment would be pushed for full qualification. New technologies, there was a very high appetite for it. But I can see right now it is coming a little bit down. As a second point on this slide, there is a more focus on standardized subsea solutions, which actually, speaks very well to point number 2. And I can see, especially in the East Mediterranean, there are a lot of conversation about long tiebacks. Long tiebacks definitely come on the table right now, and a lot of questions about what would be your limitations when it comes to the length of your umbilical system and your communication system for long tiebacks. So it's something I can really see from the conversations. And that next point, which really excites me a lot, is the subsea reuse. It's starting to come, and especially it's starting to come with the shallow water prospects, things that are, 120 and less. People are coming for conversations. If we get a tree and we get an umbilical and flexible, how would we compare it to a typical monopod? How could we, if we, for example, outweigh the monopod and bring just a shallow tree and use it for a couple of years on a dry well? Can we disconnect it and do a plug-in amendment using a simple jack up and just lift it up and put it to the next wellhead? Yes and no. So it's really common right now, and especially if this subsea hardware can be turned into an OpEx model versus the CapEx model. There are a lot of monopods, especially if I talk about the shallow water piece in Egypt, that are now actually being challenged for a monopod versus a subsea use. So that's something I can really see as an opportunity of interest and excitement. And then electrification, I can see some conversation on it as well. Because the value it brings in terms of simplification of the control system, the umbilical simplification as well, is a point that needs to be considered seriously. And there's a good Baker Hughes and also other suppliers presentations about electrification. Maybe we can bring it to one of the forums here in this nice forum as a point of conversation. Okay, I'm gonna move on. So yeah, photos and discussions, that's really the one I love. So yeah, a bit of a flavor. This is what I was talking about in Russia. This is a fabrication of a structure down there, and it took us a lot of time. By the way, that was in the middle of the daytime. Those are structures, and painting was really the critical path. It was not even fabrication, it was really painting. That's sunny Egypt. This is one of the projects in Egypt. So that's typical subsea production systems and production. So just to give you a flavor on it, manifolds, 6-slot manifolds. This is typical interface test that you do during fabrication between your fishing production structures and your manifolds. And definitely, most probably, you do that in an inclined position so you can check and really test your touch points, that they work well or they don't work well. This is one really of the key tests. What do we have here? This is the typical concrete blocks that you really need to put on when you start to go for high pressure regime for testing. Ballistic calculations needs to be done where the areas of projectiles might be. You really need to protect the zone of testing and make sure that no one enters it during testing. This is one of the safety measures that needs to be done to make sure that no one gets hurt when you execute. That's a typical launcher to manifold test, just to give you a flavor of it, how it works and how people can get really safely on it afterwards to do the interface testing and make sure that all the bits and pieces work together. That's one as well that shows you how you mobilize suction piles on their vessels to be ready to be taken offshore. Typical foundations, the muddy nature of the delta is actually allowing, it doesn't help you really big time with mud mats. If you have really a concentrated weight like manifolds, most probably you might go for suction pass design. And just to give you a flavor, some of those were up to 23, 24 meters of a height. So, but because of the sea state, you can put them like that. So imagine you would like to put those in the middle of the North Sea. I don't think that center of gravity would be used. You will definitely gonna change your approach, and most probably you're gonna have them horizontally to get your COG a little bit down. This is how it looks like when you put it on when it goes through the splash zone. So I'm sure majority of us subsea engineers have seen loads of those. And just a bit of a flavor on safety and talking to people and making sure that you get together to make sure everyone goes home safe. That's really important. As leaders and project managers and directors, you have to talk to people and make sure that everyone understands the safety mission of the project and how you deliver it safely. It's part of our liability as leaders. This is just a bit of a celebration on the day of mobilization, just to share with everyone here. So this is how the joyful moment looks when you get the scope delivered completely and safely. Yeah, so advice of the day. This is something I took from Ahmed. I don't know if anyone knows him on this code, but I took it from him and I put it in my slides. So it's just a Chinese proverb, and it tells you that if you listen, you might forget, and if you see it, you might remember. But if you do it, you're gonna understand it. That's it for me. I hope it was a bit of enlightening, but I prefer more that we have a conversation than exchange of questions if the time allows for that. Yeah.
Yes, I would also like Mr. Gordon. He has a question if he would like to speak himself, so we can hear some other voices except mine and yours.
Absolutely.
It's Gordon. Hi, good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Yeah, it was just an observation on the market kind of piece, how I'd been seeing quite a bit of activity, maybe focused on the North Sea, but with life extension activities. So I find that very interesting. So what we've got situations now in the North Sea where we've got really mature fields, and the operators are running these mature fields being in excess of 20 years production, but they're still trying to, if you will, eke out more barrels or more gas if they can. So you get a lot of discussion about the whole integrity aspect of how do we make a subsea field go beyond for another 10 years. So it's maybe past its 25-year field life. And yeah, quite a lot of activity on, if you will, stretching the field life. So it was just a comment.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think also it's a continuation, Gordon, to that reuse piece. People now I can really appreciate the mobility of the subsea design, especially for the shallow water pieces now and being introduced. I think it resonates with what you're kind of saying. And we all know that the subsea specifications and standards are really high standards because we don't want to do intervention. And that's why we put a lot of effort to make sure that when it sits on the seabed, it operates and it works. So I think that's a typical or a natural appreciation for the level of quality and engineering put in the equipment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Higazi, would you like to voice out your question as well? I'm not sure if he's listening. So he was asking about the trend for operators to go for integrated EPCI, SPS, and SURF at the same time for same contractor. He's asking, what's your thoughts about that?
Yes, it's happening. I can see it building up. But I think at the same time, it is putting pressure, Mohammed, on the vessels as well, because the vessels currently in the market are quite limited, and going for alliances is so good from a point of the integration between the SPS and between the pipeline scope and between the execution scope. But from the other end, it puts more of pressure on the vessels, if you know what I mean. And currently, from my point of view, with the current pickup in the market, especially for the subsea business, I can see a lot of pressure on vessels now. There are few areas where operators might go and they might get an SPS solution, but they might have a challenge with the vessel piece. Going for alliance definitely can give you that kind of positive, but there are other flexibilities that you still need to maintain, especially also with the demographics. So I personally see advantages and I see disadvantages, and also there are some SPS companies that they are SPS companies, if you know what I mean. They are SPS companies, they're good in SPS at the end of the day. So I'm not expecting the whole market to go for alliance. I can see very good alliances showing, proven their existence in the market, and I can see other locations where the same old model or the same model of SPS away from execution still being maintained, if you know what I mean. There are also there are medium vessel operators out there that can do a fantastic job. For example, if we look at the North Sea today, in North Sea there are SPS, and there are SURF suppliers down there that are still working, and then some of those SURF suppliers now are going for the wind and they're going for the other markets while they're maintaining the bid within the subsea business, if you know what I mean. So I have a feeling that it's good, it's being respected by multiple operators. The other model will stay because I can see there's a boom now for request for gas, and also there's a boom for offshore and renewable assets being installed. So that's how I see it, really.
Thank you, Ahmed. Appreciate your thoughts.
That was very good, Ahmed. I think our audience, multiple appreciations have been on the chat for the quality of your presentation. Thank you very much for your efforts and for your time. I don't know if you have questions yourself to ask the audience, Ahmed. You can switch seats if you want.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen questions about the material, so I think we've done a recording of it. So it's open for anyone to go and access it. Maybe yeah, I really don't have questions for anyone, but maybe a bit of a feedback from anyone. Moving forward, are there any topics that we would like, within ESSE that we would like to, do and cover in the upcoming events, just to keep the cadence? Because I believe communication is key, and having those kind of forums is so important because it inspires those who are new to the industry, and it also helps the experts to exchange views. So maybe we can pick up a topic and then see if we can get the material or get the right people to share and chat and exchange information and collaborate.
That's great. I think as Hikazi says, we can have more sessions on detailed elements of the project execution plan, something like managing the critical path, or maybe discussing some challenges or case studies. Different projects have different challenges, so we can have some sessions on some specific topics. Also, we have a question from our participant, Mr. Salim. He says, what type of obstacles have you experienced from suppliers that have been a limitation towards your project execution? I think that will be the last question we have.
Okay. What kind of supplier challenges that we've seen? I can pick up a few examples. Welding, for example, clad welding took a bit of learning curve, especially if you're going to talk about Egypt, for example. I remember the first clad that was done, I think 10 years ago, was actually a challenge. Today, it's much simpler. Where you can see the welders are getting comfortable with it, they can do it. And I remember there was a big pushback to stick with the carbon steel, don't do any clad plates until we started to understand the risks. How can we segregate between the carbon steel material and between the clad material? How can we get the tools and the equipment and train the people to set ourselves for success? And those kind of things that you really pick up during your execution plan and testing the different suppliers, if a supplier is actually promising and they can do the job, you might go for an early program. I remember in one of the projects in Egypt, we went for the rings. We bought the rings ahead of the plan by 4 months. And we took that to the fabricator and we went for a full training program. Everyone did welding. So until everyone felt comfortable with it. And that was actually a recipe for success, if you know what I mean. I remember we had a project in Norway where the contractor was going for bankruptcy. So we had to go quickly and go for another supplier and qualify them to set ourselves the job, especially when it comes to these similar tricky welds. And Gordon can talk about that for a bit of a time. So the similar weld is a bit of a tricky. And if your contractor is bankrupt and you want to go for another one, you have to go for a very, very strong qualification to make sure that weld, when it goes on the seabed, it will work and it will demonstrate the functional requirements you need out of it for 25 years or more. Obsolescence definitely is a challenge. Some suppliers get bankrupt, especially I can see that now on the communication piece, cards, printed chips. You can really see that happening right now. Small scale things like hot stabs, multiple couplers. You can see some bankruptcy now, or companies changing the whole it just changed the whole activity. They are not doing that product anymore. Those kind of things that you really pick up, and that's why in your execution plan you have to look at your model, look at those, and get your supply chain team, sit with them and say, hey guys, what keeps you up at night? What is the status of those suppliers for that part number? What are the risks? And basically listen carefully, because you're gonna pick up really critical points out of that conversation.
Yeah, that's very thoughtful. Yeah. I think we are reaching the 1 hour mark, so we have some final questions. So Higazi was asking how to attract more young generation to the industry.
I love your tricky questions, Mohammed. Well, I don't know. I was a mechanical engineer working on pumps and compressors when I joined MP and when I joined BP, and I just loved static equipment. And then I heard that there are some equipment that can be put on the seabed that can really operate on a depth up to 3-4 kilometers, and they can operate up to 25 to 40 years. And for me, that was enough statement for me to go ahead and try to work on it. Technology, using like a NASA technology on the seabed. For me, it makes me smile in the morning, and it makes me keen to really understand, harness that technology and see the challenges of it, because that bit of subsea equipment that you put on the seabed is not only a piece of engineering that's gonna sit on the concrete base. No, you will have to think about how we're gonna test it, how we're going to demonstrate the interfaces, that it works from an end-to-end point of view, which takes a lot of effort. How we're going to put it on a barge, as you can see in that photo, and make sure that it works under the sea conditions and the sea state at different parts of the world. And how we're going to put it on the seabed and hook it up together and take the seawater out of it and make it safe for the introduction of the hydrocarbons. So all those, just challenges I said, definitely I use that as a publicity for the subsea engineering and the beauty of it. So I'm in for subsea engineering, definitely.
Yeah, on my side, I would say having a multidisciplinary field of work is really interesting on its own. So it's really full of action and movement. So it can attract people. But when it comes to work, the first question is how are you going to get paid? So this is the first question.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm meeting a lot of fabulous field services engineers, people working in multiple areas, and maybe we can, in the sessions we can bring, a subsea engineering manager to talk about his group. We can bring someone who's done field services engineers and start up a lot of equipment offshore to tell us his views. Maybe a project manager or director can come and see, how he orchestrates the full picture, and engineering managers how they make sure that all the yellow equipment operate efficiently on the seabed. So we can really give, the young talents, the different, wine glass opportunities and how they can really grow up, their career moving upwards. So, it's something that we can do, Ahmed and Mohammed, for the upcoming sessions.
Yeah, definitely. We're trying to get something with universities in Egypt. but it's taking us some time to get to the management of those universities, but we're working on it. And I think we can also use your expertise on that, and also our kind participants who would like to share with us our activity. I think we're concluding. I would like to thank you, Ahmed, very much for your presentation. It's really thoughtful and interesting. I learned some new things myself, and I could see our audience is really happy about it. Thank you all for your time. Also, for our participants, I can see some new faces and also some old faces. I would like to ask you to keep following our LinkedIn page. The recording should be on our YouTube channel. Also, I will share it. I already shared it on the chat. And we will share it on the LinkedIn soon enough once we upload this session. Also, Ahmed, some people were asking about the presentation. Can we share the presentation with them directly?
Yeah, I can send that to you, Ahmed. Not a problem.
Okay, so yeah, okay, perfect. So Ahmed will send it to me, and I will pass it to the attendees. I have the emails from the registration. So I hope this is not the last time we host you. We have more to come, and also for the participants, we would love to see you guys jumping in every time. Those sessions are as much as valuable as you participate and share your thoughts, rather than just having one monologue from one speaker. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ahmed. If you want to share some final thoughts from your side.
No, I'm fine. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for having me.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And hopefully we see you very soon when our next webinar. We're working hard on having another session about subsea design. We will keep you posted about it once it's ready. Thank you very much for your time, and hope you benefited from our session today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.
Here's Ahmed.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, guys.